I'm Kyle Webb. I spend a lot of time thinking about how systems actually work, who they work for, who they don't, and how we design them differently. Because most people aren't behind because they lack effort. They're behind because of how access is structured. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Most people think that the game is fixed. Work hard, make good decisions, stay disciplined, and eventually things open up. That's what we're told. But if you pay attention long enough, something starts to feel off. You see people doing everything right, checking all the boxes, and still not getting access to opportunities that actually change their life and their family's life. At the same time, you see other people no smarter, no more capable. Sometimes they're just average. They move through environments where opportunities seems to find them early and often. That's not random, that's structure. We're told the system rewards effort, talent, discipline, consistency, and at a surface level, that's all true. The system does reward merit, but those things don't determine access. And access determines everything that follows. What rooms you're in, what conversations you're around, what opportunities you can even see, what capital you can participate in, what upside you're allowed to touch. So if you're not in the right environment, you don't just miss opportunities, you don't even see them. And you can actually see how this plays out over time. Take housing. After World War II, the GI Bill created one of the greatest wealth building opportunities in American history, but not everyone had equal access to it. And even when they did, it was often limited to red-lined neighborhoods, areas where home values didn't grow the same over time. That doesn't just affect one generation, that affects where families live, which affects schools, which affects exposure. Now you've got people growing up in environments that don't have the same resources, don't have the same networks, don't have the same visibility into what's possible. Not because they lack potential, but because the system they're inside doesn't give them the same access points. And then later, when it's time to build something, to raise capital, or to step into an opportunity, a lot of those opportunities aren't public. They move through networks, through relationships, through proximity. So if you were never close to those environments, you don't just miss the opportunity. You don't even know it exists. That's not a talent problem. That is an access problem. And this is where most people get it wrong. They think that because they need to work harder, but the people I'm talking to right now, you're not lacking effort. You're operating inside systems that weren't designed for your full participation. And in many cases, were designed knowing exactly who would and wouldn't be able to access them. Access to opportunity and capital isn't just limited, it's structured. Systems determine who gets exposure, who gets invited, who gets trusted, who gets to participate early, and who gets to compound. Those systems are not neutral. They are designed. They route opportunity. They concentrate participation. They reinforce themselves over time. And to be clear, they work. They just don't work for most people. And they're not trying to. If you compress it, systems shape access. Access shapes participation. Participation takes initiative. And execution drives outcomes. That's the game. When I was an undergrad, a professor told me a story I've never forgotten. There was a scholarship funded by an alum with a very specific criteria. He only knew of one student who was qualified. That student had around a C average, didn't need the money his parents could pay, so the scholarship went to him. Later, the professor found out something that bothered him. There was another student, a straight A student, on the verge of dropping out because he couldn't afford to stay in school. He met the same prerequisites, but he was clearly more qualified. No one connected him to the opportunity. By the time the professor found out, it was too late. Same prerequisites, one clearly more qualified, very different outcomes. Not because of effort, not because of ability, but because of access. That's how systems work. Not always maliciously, but consistently. So let's deal with the part people don't like to hear. If you don't have access, you are behind. That's not judgment, that's just reality. And once you accept that, your strategy has to change. Because now it's not just about working harder, it's about moving differently, more intentionally, more strategically, more aware of how access is actually created. But this is where people go wrong again. They hear that and turn it into an excuse. The system is unfair. It is. And you don't get to opt out because it's unfair. You get to see it clearly and respond accordingly. That is what I mean by being built different. And I want to be clear, this isn't about mindset. It's not about grinding harder. It's not about standing out. It's definitely not about pretending the system doesn't exist. To be built different is to intentionally design the systems you move within. how you live, what you build, who you align with. So you're not just going through them, you're shaping how they work. And it starts with you, how you think, how you move, how you decide, how you show up. Then it extends into everything, your career, your business, your capital, your relationships, the environments you choose to enter or avoid. People who move this way don't just ask, how do I succeed? They ask, what system am I in? How does it actually work? Where am I positioned within it? How do I move closer to access? And over time, how do I change it? Because here's the progression most people never see. You don't start by changing systems. You start by understanding them. Then you learn to navigate them. Then you position yourself to align with them. Then, over time, you gain enough leverage to influence them through capital, through relationships, through control, and at times by breaking the systems themselves. And eventually, you help redesign them so more people can actually participate. That's the part most people skip. They either try to fight the systems they don't understand, or they submit to the systems that will never fully include them. And to be clear, there's a time to align and there's a time to challenge. There's a time to learn the rules and there's a time to break them. There's a time to go along with the system and there's a time to tear it down. If you move this way, you understand that tension and you move accordingly. Because this just isn't about individual success. It's about participation. Right now, too many systems concentrate upside, restrict access, misallocate opportunity, not because people aren't capable, but because exclusion isn't a flaw. It's often an outcome of the design. So once you see it, you have a choice. Some people will use that awareness to create access for themselves, and that's fine. But that's not who I'm talking to. I'm talking to the ones who know it doesn't stop there. The ones who understand, once you learn, you teach. Once you access, you connect. Once you connect, you build. Once you build, you create space for others. Each one learns, each one moves, each one reaches back. And together we start to shift what's possible. Not all at once, but over time, until the systems themselves begin to reflect something different. Not just for a few, but for more of us. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens by design. It happens when we're built different.